I think there's a good reason why Babylon the Great is mentioned right here. Just this one verse right here, it really quick says, it says, okay, remember the Chaldeans when they set up the towers and it was brought to ruin. Um, it's mentioning that for a reason, but it may not necessarily be that that's the reason the ships are howling. You know what I'm saying? It could be that it's just saying, okay, think about the Chaldeans because this has something to do with the Chaldeans. Because again, the destruction of Babylon the Great, it's not going to happen at the start of a 70-year period. All throughout the text, it tells us it's at the end of the 70-year period. In Jeremiah, it's at the end of the 70 years. Babylon the Great, the destruction of that is a nuclear event. It's an asteroid impact and a nuclear event. That is the end. There's not going to be 70 years after that. So there's a reason why Babylon the Great is mentioned right here, right before it starts talking about the 70 years. So that's why I think it's interesting that the U.S., because the U.S. is part of Babylon the Great, the U.S. first started trading with China for 70 years. Japan was forgotten during that time. And then at the end of that, the U.S. opened trade with Japan. So that's basically Babylon the Great that is trading. I mean, it's not just the U.S. Babylon the Great covers that whole area. The whole, and let me just go back here to Babylon the Great really quick, because I know this is a new video. We got to look at this again. Babylon the Great covers that whole area where they're worshiping Yehovah. This whole area right here, minus the eastern countries. So I think it's significant that, okay, the first U.S. ship to arrive in China for trade, the U.S. right here, which is part of Babylon the Great, the first ship to arrive in 1784, the Empress of China, and for 70 years after that first ship arrived, Japan was closed to the outside world. They were in that Edo period, that period of isolation. And then trade was opened up with them at the end of that 70-year period. I think that's highly significant. Right there. And like I said, I think that may be why the Babylonians are mentioned right here. Think about the Babylonians here because that has something to do with this 70 years of Tyre, possibly. Okay, so Japan is a huge merchant for the U.S. and the rest of the world, just like it says here in verse 11, the merchant city. Okay, but this isn't complete because Isaiah says the ships howl because the strength of Tyrus is laid waste. So something has to be laid waste at the start of that 70-year period. That's what it seems like it's saying here. And we all know Japan was laid waste, so to speak, at the dropping of the atomic bombs in 1945. And that occurred at the end of one of the 1260-year tribulation periods that started after the fulfillment of Daniel 12:11. It has to start after the fulfillment of the 1290 years. Because Jesus said, after you see the abomination of desolation, then will be great tribulation. The tribulation has to start after that abomination of desolation is set up. And that abomination of desolation has to be set up after 1290 days or years. Well, that's what happened right here in 685. So that tribulation period, that is absolutely significant. And at the end of that, the bombing of Hiroshima, it's very significant. And the year 1945, when that atomic bomb was dropped at the end of that 1260-year period of tribulation, that was also significant, not just because of it was the year that the bomb was dropped, but it was also significant because it was the first year of the final phase of the beast, the UN. And the 70 years after 1945 ends in 2015. And here's another odd coincidence. There's this restaurant in San Francisco called the Empress of China. And it's closing at the end of 2014. I guess it was opened up in the 1960s and it's closing at the end of this year, right before 2015. The 70-year period ends in 2015. So remember, the Empress of China, that was the first ship that began U.S. trade with China. Okay, so Japan was laid waste in 1945, and some think Hiroshima has been forgotten. So it could be that this 70-year period here that began U.S. trade with the Far East and ended with Japan trading its merchandise to the world, it could be that that's part of the fulfillment. But this 70-year period beginning at the atomic bomb is the one that may be the one that corresponds to Jeremiah's prediction of the destruction of Babylon, because Jeremiah's prediction ends with the wrath, the asteroid impact. Jeremiah's 70 years end with the wrath. So 1945, again, was also the first year of the UN. So the nations surrounding Israel, which is what Jeremiah 25 talks about, the nations around Israel were definitely serving Babylon during that 70-year period. So the 70 years of Tyre, if that's Japan, that may also correspond to the 70 years of Jeremiah 25. You see what I mean? Two different places right here. You have Tyre, the land of Tarshish, the symbolic place of the islands. And then you have literally the countries around the Middle Eastern country of Israel serving Babylon during that same time period. I don't know that for sure, but I think it's possible. Okay, and here's the final thing I wanted to tell you about, because this part at the end of Isaiah 23, verse 18, it says, Tyre's merchandise will be holy to the Lord. In other words, holy to the world government. Again, we talk about that in the video, The Dragon, the Beast, and the Harem. It's linked below. But it says its merchandise will be for those who dwell before that world government, basically, to eat sufficiently and for durable clothing. And it's right here. This is the lexicon. Okay, but look at the meanings of these words. We already know this word right here from our investigation of Genesis 3. It's number 398. And it was translated as food, but it also means use. So Tyre's merchandise will be holy to the Lord for them that dwell before the Lord to use sufficiently, or to use to its full, and for durable clothing. Or the translation right here, which is choice attire. So you can see these words right here also mean choice covering. So it will be holy, the merchandise will be holy to the Lord and those dwelling with the Lord to use sufficiently for choice covering. Wow. Okay, well, what is the Lord's covering? The Lord's covering is light. Right here, Psalm 104. We've talked about this cloak of light before. It's also called the coat of many colors that Jacob gave to Joseph. The coat of light. That coat of many colors is a coat of light because colors make up the visible portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. And this is the image that deceived. It's this cloak of light. It's a holographic technology. It's the image that made the Isha beautiful in the Garden of Eden. We talk about this in the video on Genesis 3. It's linked below if you want to check that out. It's a cloak of light that changes their appearance. It's some type of holographic technology that makes use of electromagnetic fields. Okay, well, that would make sense because Japan is the top producer of electronics in the world. So it says Tarshish is provides the merchandise for that choice covering. So Japan is the top producer of electronics in the world. So electromagnetic technology. They are the top producer of that. So that makes sense. Isaiah 23 may actually be telling us that Japan is manufacturing the holographic technology that is being used by the world government right now. Verse 18. And it talks about this technology all throughout the text. Remember when we examined Isaiah 3 and it made mention of how in the last days the changeable suits of apparel would be taken away from them. Their beauty will be gone, and the attire of the breathing substance of human bodies, the changeable suits of apparel, the covering membrane, the cloaks. It's talking about light technology. And then remember in Revelation, it says, and they finally mastered the ability to make the image speak. Remember that? Because it's one thing to have a holographic technology over your body that looks totally real. They somehow create it so that it covers you almost like a garment. Yeah, that's one thing. But it's a whole nother thing when you're actually able to synchronize speaking and moving with that holographic technology. You know what I mean? And moving they could even do, I'm sure. But the speaking part would be very, very detailed. And remember in Revelation, it says they finally mastered, and the speaking part of it, they got the image to finally speak to where it was synchronized perfectly. And then they started using it and they deceived everybody. So it's all throughout the text, and we've talked about it, but this technology might refer to Project Bluebeam or something similar. I don't know. It's probably top secret. But China is already giving demonstrations of holograms and invisibility technology. You might remember this hologram, or I think they were calling it a mirage, that was supposedly seen in East China in 2011. They never tell us what the cutting edge technology is. It's always top secret if it's cutting edge. And I don't think it's too much of a stretch to think that the top secret tech they don't tell anyone about is light disguises. I mean, how they do it, I can't say, but that doesn't prove anything because most of us can't even explain how a television works, and that doesn't make them any less real. You know what I mean? But that may be what Isaiah 23 actually refers to, because Isaiah talked about it in chapter 3 as well, and it's all throughout the text. So maybe the 70 years in Isaiah 23 and Jeremiah 25 actually do connect. Maybe it's about Japan. So the texts say he will come like a thief in the night. Jesus. Well, it implies that it says that he will come like a thief in the night at a time they don't expect. But for the bride, he won't be a thief. He will be a groom, a bridegroom. That's the escape. Because the bride doesn't go through the wrath. And I have to wonder if this is depicted in the movie Peter Pan because it references the time Hiroshima was dropped at 8:15. Anyway, so that's pretty much it for this week. There's tons of links below this video. If you want to know more about anything, just click on show more underneath this video that you're watching on YouTube. And there are tons of links under here. I also have an ebook format, and it's also on Amazon as well if you want to check that out. So I want to say again, thank you so much to those of you that have been able to provide support, because I really, truly cannot do this without your help. So thank you. Thank you. The links are below if you have any more questions, and I hope you're all doing well, and I will talk to you next week. Okay, bye-bye.